Hi everyone, my name is Jane and I'm a typical schoolgirl. Or at least I had thought so. I had a completely ordinary life while I studied, barely passed my classes from year to year with C's and D's, and just like any other kid, I would get in arguments with my mom. I wanted to take drawing lessons and become a famous artist someday, but she wouldn't let me. Then, when I became a teenager, literally nothing changed then either. I had the occasional bouts of anxiety, reckless abandonment, and fun, just like everyone else. That is, until very recently. It has come to my attention that something might be seriously wrong with me. And it happened accidentally one night in my sleep. Several days ago, after a fight with my mother, I came to my room and got in bed. For a long time, I was fidgeting back and forth because I couldn't fall asleep. The words of my mother still rung in my head. "You won't achieve anything. You're useless. You don't have any skills." I was used to it at this point. Or at least I thought I was. It was crap she would say to me every day when I came home. These words I could still hear in my head while I was lying in bed. Anytime I tried to think of something else, her words would come barging into my mind again, taking control. So I lay there, struggling till 4 a.m., and only then did I finally fall asleep. But honestly, I wish that I hadn't. In the morning, I woke up feeling even worse than before, and it wasn't just from a lack of sleep. There was a dream that I had that night. It was terrifying, and I didn't want to think of it. I had to put it out of my mind, but I woke up shaking and in tears. I couldn't get over it for a long time. After about 20 minutes, I finally came to my senses, realizing that it was just a dream. Don't dwell on it. So I got up, went to the bathroom, washed my face, and went downstairs to have breakfast. The scene downstairs upset me, too. My mother was sitting at the table and crying. Her exhausted face and red eyes had told me that she'd been crying for several hours at that point. I sat next to her and asked what happened. She looked at me and said that this morning her brother, my dear Uncle Sam, died. He was a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and he had died in a motorcycle accident. And my mother had to go and identify the body just this morning. I was shocked. He was so young and kind, so full of life. I loved him. My mother asked me to leave her alone, so I went upstairs to my room. I didn't want to go to school, so I called my friend Samantha and told her that I would be staying home. She promised to tell the teachers in my stead. I didn't go into details on the phone call. I just said that we had some family issues, which was the truth. But apparently, Samantha thought that my mom and I had gotten into another fight, which I guess also wasn't exactly untrue. We were fighting well into the night, but I didn't care what she thought at that moment. It didn't matter now. The only thing that mattered was that my Uncle Sam was gone. He was a role model for me, so kind and cheerful. He loved everything and everyone around him. And now he was gone. But I didn't cry. The pain inside me was too strong for tears. And that's when it hit me. I recalled the dream I had the night before. It was a bit fuzzy in the morning when I first woke up, but I had seen my uncle's death, and I had woken up in tears. Wait. Was it a dream? Maybe it wasn't. What if my mother had just come in early in the morning and had told me everything, but I was too sleepy and refused to believe it? Or, I mean, what else could it be, right? Prophetic dreams are nonsense. Everyone knows that. You probably think I went mad. And I was so sad that I made out some dream where I saw in detail how my uncle at high speed on his motorbike hit someone. Yes, maybe you're right. That's definitely it. That has to be it. Anyway, the important thing now is to calm down my mother. So I went back downstairs and saw my mother gathering her thoughts and starting to make breakfast. "Hey, Mom, can I help you?" I had asked. But she remained silent. "I was thinking I wouldn't be going to school today," I had added carefully. She decided that she wasn't going to ignore that. "No, you will go to school immediately. Take your breakfast. You can eat it between classes. Get out of here. Go to school." She turned her tearful face to me and answered harshly. I said nothing. I just left the kitchen. I took my backpack into the hall and stormed out of the house. Only then did I finally start crying. I realized that the last man on earth who understood me is gone. And I was left with this terrible woman who can't even feel sorry for herself or for her own daughter, even in grief. This was a nightmare. It's unbearable. It hurts so much. I wish I had died instead of my uncle. I had to stop and clear my mind. I shouldn't have thought such harsh things about my mother. I can't. She's all I have left. She's just trying to get by, like me, but But still, I just want someone to understand me, embrace me, tell me that things are going to be okay. When I arrived at school, I got reprimanded for lying about family issues and for cutting the first 2 classes. Great, just great. Life couldn't be better. Samantha caught me between classes and asked exactly what had happened, and I told her. She couldn't believe it. She especially didn't believe my dream was related to the incident, and honestly, I didn't believe it either, so I didn't go into any details. I didn't tell her that I saw precisely how my uncle died in all of its gruesome detail. Samantha, though, was the only one who did actually feel sorry for me. My classmates and teachers just honestly didn't care why I had cut classes. All that happened the rest of the day was I failed some tests and went back home. But when I got there, my mom wasn't there. Honestly, though, I didn't mind. I was happy to have some peace and quiet. I turned on the TV and froze. On the news, I could see a motorcycle crashing into a truck. It was my uncle. It was the death of my uncle. And the accident that was shown on the TV was exactly as I saw it in my dream. How could that be possible? No, this was just nonsense. My mind's playing tricks on me. It can't be true. I pulled myself together, turned off the TV, and ran upstairs to my room. Why did I have a dream like that? How was this possible? What was going on? I didn't want to fall asleep anymore. Never, never again. What if I caused him to die? What if it was my fault? I was freaking out for about an hour. And then I heard the front door opening and my mother coming in. I tried to calm down. I didn't want her to yell at me while I was in a state like this. I took several deep breaths and slowly came back to my senses. I had to do something that could turn off my dreams. I knew that eventually I would have to fall asleep again. It was inevitable. But if I was going to be sure to dreamless sleep, I would have to make myself exhausted. So I decided to go out for a run. It was also a good excuse to keep ignoring my mom. I left the house at about midnight. I sneaked out silently and carefully so my mother wouldn't hear the noise. And after a good run, I came back, took a shower, and got to bed. After several minutes, I was sleeping tight. But I woke up feeling terrible pain in my legs. I felt my muscles were tearing apart. Last night's run had its consequences, but that was nothing. The thing I was most afraid of happened. I had a dream. I skipped washing my face and the other morning routine stuff because I wanted to turn on the TV as soon as possible. I had to know. Please, not this again. Just be a dream. Please, please, please. I beg you, please, please. I sat down in front of the TV. With a shaking hand, I grabbed the remote and turned it on. And I knew that when I heard the news, my heart would be broken, but I had to make sure. This was my last chance. If my dream appeared to be the truth, that means my dreams can determine the future, a terrible and bloody future. That's why I wanted it to be a lie. Not this, not now. Why me? And when I turned on the TV, I saw the daily news and almost lost consciousness. Everything was just like in my dream. Again. It was as if it was my uncle all over again. The plane with 250 passengers crashed last night. It was a transatlantic flight. It didn't end well. I had seen the plane in my dream. I heard the heartbreaking screams of terror and the pain made by the dying passengers. I saw the turmoil. I saw the pilots going frantic. I knew the reason for the crash. I realized then that I knew exactly the reason. And I knew exactly why my uncle's motorbike had run into a truck. Wait a minute. This must mean that I can see the future. Maybe somehow I could even prevent catastrophes. But for that, I had to wake up in time. At least a few hours before whatever accident was going to occur. Maybe I could help people. Maybe I could save a lot of human lives, even if I couldn't save my uncle. But how? What am I supposed to do? I'm just a kid. Where do I even begin? And who would believe me? Hi, it's me, Jane, again, and I'm just so confused. Like, for real. And I don't know what I should do now. As you know, I have these dreams that show the near future, and these dreams seem to come true pretty quickly. And so far, their consequences have been awful. But I think I know what to do about it. I don't think they're just gonna flat out stop, and I can't just not go to sleep. The terrifying things I've seen in my dreams, the death of my uncle, the plane crash, who knows what could be next? Today is only the third day of me being a future seer, and I have no idea how to control this, not to mention how to handle it. For right now, I should at least find out who I can trust and tell about my secret. My first choice is obviously going to be Samantha. Samantha's the only close person I have left. My mother would probably say that I was absurd and just start yelling. So I think Samantha's my only choice. I grabbed my phone and called my friend. Samantha answered at once, with her cheerful voice, just as always. She said she caught a cold and would stay home, but in fact, Samantha secretly told me that she was fine and her mother just let her stay home anyway. Lucky brat, honestly. Anyway, I realized that this was my opportunity. I told Samantha that I'd be coming over really soon. She seemed to be glad to hear it. I packed my bag and left the house, pretending that I was going to school. I reached my friend's house in about 30 minutes, but I didn't know what to say. Like, hey, best friend, I can suddenly see the future. Ain't that neat? Who the hell would believe that? Samantha and her mom fed me and gave me some tea. Then we started to watch one of our all-time favorite movies. We must have seen it like 50 times by now. So honestly, I wasn't really paying attention, but just trying to figure out what I should say. At the moment, I had made up my mind. I could say nothing but the truth. So when the movie ended, I looked at her and told her everything. About the first dream, my uncle, my mother who said he died the next morning, about the plane, the crash, and about the news where I saw the horrible details of the accident. Samantha was listening, but I could tell she was having a hard time believing her ears. When I stopped talking, my friend was looking at me with nothing less than astonishment. I thought she would start laughing because my words sounded like crazy talk. Even I couldn't help but think so. But she didn't. Samantha and I have been friends forever. She knows when I lie. She also knows that I have no reason to make something up that's so easily disprovable and so stupid. She just kind of stared at me for a bit, with her head cocked to the side. Finally, she said, "You have a duty to prevent as many of these accidents that you see in your dreams as possible." At first, I was hesitant. I didn't know what I would see next time. Samantha said that it didn't matter. Samantha told me to call her at every dream, and she would decide what we would do next. That was it. That was the whole plan. It seemed simple enough for me, though I didn't quite know how she was going to deal with it. But that was a huge weight off my shoulders, so I readily agreed. At about 6 p.m., I left Samantha's house and went home. My mom had called me several times already, and when I finally answered, she screamed, "Finally, where the hell are you? Get home or you'll be sorry." I just muttered an okay and walked back home. When I arrived, everything was quite calm. It was kind of unnerving, honestly. My mom didn't even look at me. She just plopped dinner on my plate and didn't say a single word. Then she turned on the TV and I went upstairs, did my homework, read some more follow-up information about the crash, and hesitantly climbed into bed. Samantha and I agreed that I can call her at any moment, regardless of the time of day. As soon as I wake up, I should call her. To be honest, I felt a bit better knowing that I've shared my secret with somebody. Also, I felt confident because from now on, it wasn't just my responsibility to bear. Samantha would handle everything. She's so strong and reliable. Thinking about all of this, I fell asleep, only to wake up at 4 a.m. because I had another awful dream. And I didn't know at first whether I should call Samantha or not. The dream was about her. I couldn't think straight. My mind was refusing to take it as something real. I tried to think at that time that it was just a bad dream, but in fact, I knew better. I saw Samantha breaking her leg during gym class, and I knew that the fracture would be so bad it would probably make her a cripple for the rest of her life. Oh, Samantha, she's so fond of sports. Way more athletic than I ever will be. She planned to become a coach. Hell, she even has a scholarship for sports medicine at a university already. But if she ends up breaking her leg that badly, all of her efforts would be in vain. Samantha would never be able to make it in something she's dreamed about for so long. This will ruin her life in just a single moment. How am I supposed to tell her? What should she do? It's one thing to know about something not related to you. It's a whole other ballgame when you know that the accident will happen to you. It's overwhelming. You're afraid what will happen and everything's going to be awful. Maybe she'll destroy herself, preventing it from coming true, like freaking Macbeth over here. Maybe everything I see is set in stone. We hadn't thought about that possibility. But I had to tell her it was my duty as a friend. Maybe she could get away from her supposed fate. She could just stay home again and lay in bed all day long. And the next night there would be another dream, and nothing will happen. Everything will be normal, right? I didn't consider the implications of freaking free will and fate before all this. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is your life fated or is it changeable? If you don't know what's going to happen, does the answer even matter? But what about if you can see it? Would you try and change your own destiny? I laid awake after having a freaking existential crisis until it was 6 a.m. It was time. I had to call. Samantha and I had gym for first period at 8 in the godforsaken morning. At least usually woke us all up for the rest of the day. Now, obviously, Samantha was not one to skip this class. I called her. As expected, she was already awake and starting to get ready for class. She usually stretches, has a light breakfast, and then goes for a run around the block. Yeah, my friend's a bit weird, but she has a goal, and I've always admired her for continually striving for it. I quickly begged Samantha not to go to school today, but she just snickered and asked me about my dream. I started to tell her that it was about her. This time, she didn't snicker. It wasn't all that funny anymore. She wanted to know what exactly I saw. I started to tell her about the broken leg, but she began to panic and interrupted me. What did you see? What? Tell me! Please, Jane, what happened? Or I guess will happen. Why me, Jane? What have I done to you? She was crying. She was hysterical. What could I do? It wasn't on purpose. I never asked for these dreams. Never. Who would want to watch people suffer every night? And now this? It's not my fault that this has happened to me. I paused, breathing heavy, trying to get my own emotions under control, but I guess Samantha took my silence as a threat. She hung up. I didn't get the chance to tell her about her breaking her leg. I called her one more time, but she hung up again. What if she decided that I made up everything? Does she really think so lowly of me that I would screw around with her life and her health like that? I called her mother. With a cold tone, she said that Samantha, unlike someone else, had already gone to the gym, and obviously I was that someone else. I'm already well aware that her mother doesn't think well of me, but it doesn't matter now because Samantha already left. I rushed out of my room as fast as possible. My mother wanted to say something to me, but I didn't slow down for her. I had never run at a full sprint for that long before. My side, my lungs, everything burned, but I didn't care. I had to make it in time. I needed to help my friend, but what if... No, I couldn't even think about that. I will be there on time. Everything will be fine. I flew into school, running in the direction of the gym. I almost ran into the coach, but he just looked at me with a defiant eye. I took a glance at the clock. It was 8:05. But we always start a little later. We have to change, after all. I made my way to the gym and was stopped by the teacher. He told me he was going to send me to the principal's office because of my late arrival. Really? Now? When my best friend's livelihood was on the line? I just stared at him defiantly. He repeated his words once again, but this time rather harshly and loudly. Jane, go to the principal. You can't treat my class and me in such a disrespectful way. But Mr. Johnson, I had started, but he interrupted me by moving his hand and pushed me out of the gym. The only thing I managed to see was Samantha climbing up the rope. I made up my mind on the spot. I opened the gym door and rushed to Samantha with a scream. Samantha, please don't do this! Get down! Samantha! At that moment, Samantha, who was already pretty high on the rope, heard my voice, got confused, and lost her balance. Her hand slid off the rope and she fell. I watched everything in slow motion, Samantha falling down, landing badly, the terrified faces of our classmates, and the gym teacher trying to help my friend. I stood there, as if petrified, because I realized that Samantha fell because of me. Suddenly, I heard a terrible scream and snapped back to reality. Samantha was lying on the floor, writhing in pain. Our classmates tried to help her stand up. Mr. Johnson ran over to me, grabbed my hand, and walked me out of the gym. You don't need to see this, he whispered through his teeth. He pushed me out of the room and closed the door in front of me. It was my fault. It was all my fault. Hey, it's me, Jane, again. And to be honest, I still can't explain what happened last time. Every time I close my eyes, I can still see Samantha falling down. Samantha, who was smiling just several hours ago. Samantha, who wanted to go into sports and help people. And now she's in the hospital, and it's all my fault. After that accident, I was sent home for several weeks for distant learning. The principal told my mother that if she didn't want me arrested, she should keep me under lock and key. The principal also said that I wasn't allowed to go to school. People seemed to think that I was trying to hurt her on purpose. My classmates were supposed to send me homework, but they stopped talking to me. They ignored my emails and DMs too. Even if they did read my messages, they would never answer. My mom had to call all their moms, but they were also not going to help me. They said she ought to discipline me better. So I spent the second week at home. Now I don't even have homework, school, or Samantha to keep me company, because she also began to ignore me. So what do I have to live for now? All I have now is sitting, staring at something, and eating. I can't even watch our favorite movie without wanting to throw up. My mother also doesn't want to speak to me. I think she feels sorry, or maybe she's just angry. I feel like I live in some kind of vacuum, like an alternate reality, or like a terrible nightmare. Just what's the point of living if it's going to be like this? The only good thing that's happened was that the dream stopped. Maybe I finally managed to make myself so exhausted. Maybe I finally cracked. My whole life was thrown out of balance. I had just started to come to terms with my new reality with these dreams. Then the world shifted again. Now I'm trapped like a disgusting rat in my own home. And then, once again, something weird happened the other night. I had a dream. I saw the mall about a mile away from our house. I saw a fire blazing. I saw people trying to escape, but the doors were locked. People were suffocating and dying left and right. The scene was terrible. I woke up in a sweat. That means, oh God, the dreams were back. It seems like the fates decided my life wasn't bad enough yet. After waking up, I tried to erase the dream out of my mind, but it was so damn vivid. I ran out of patience and asked my mom if I could go out for a walk. Strangely, she let me go. She just forbade me to go to school and said that I had to avoid my classmates, who were honestly still quite hostile towards me. That was easy enough to agree with my mom because I didn't plan to go to school or see my classmates. All I needed to do was visit the mall and warn everyone to evacuate as fast as possible. I walked towards the mall brooding. The accident with Samantha clearly showed me how distrustful people could be, so I had to figure out an exact and clear explanation. I reached the mall and saw, even at this early hour, that it was packed. I started to approach security personnel to warn them about the fire, but I freaked out. What would he do right now, even knowing that there could be an accident? So I changed my mind. I approached him and asked him to take me instead to the administration. He looked at me with surprise, and then he laughed and told me that little girls should just go shopping. What could someone like me need from management? I tried to explain that I enjoyed shopping in one of the mall stores, but the salesperson was in breach of mall policy and behaved rather rudely to me. That's why I wanted to make a complaint. The guard just smirked and said, "Sorry, little miss. That's something you ought to take up with that store's manager. Ain't got nothing to do with me." I insisted that he should take me to the mall administration. He was sick enough of bickering with me and asked me to leave him alone because he had to go back to work. But I wasn't about to give up so easily. I decided to speak to the women who were sitting at reception. I told them about an accident that would happen at the mall today. They responded to the words of such a small girl in a way I expected. They just laughed and asked me what was so terrible that might happen. I told them that there would be a fire. I said that I heard a conversation between two guys standing not too far from the mall and talking about arson. The reception girls thought a little bit, looked at each other, and then laughed even more. They called me a fibber and asked me to leave. I can't believe everyone in this godforsaken town is so reckless and checks nothing. Anything could happen. Nothing is finite. Life can be snatched away in a single moment, even yours. A wave of anger was tearing me apart. I wanted to scream for everyone to pay attention to me, for everyone to realize what was going on, for everyone to run away, escape. I was standing in the middle of the first floor looking around. Happy people were shopping, laughing, playing with their kids, not a care in the world. I couldn't believe that they're going to die today. I couldn't let it happen. I was the only one who knew the truth. I was the only one who could prevent the accident. I needed to overcome my fear, let my anger fuel my adrenaline. So I took a risk. I hopped up on a table and screamed to the whole mall that the people needed to get out of that place, that there's a fire inside the building that would collapse soon. It worked, to some degree. People began to run out of the building. Not all of them heeded my words, though, but it did seem like a lot of kids left, so that was good at least. But I kept screaming. The guard I had spoke to earlier immediately grabbed me and pulled me towards the exit, but I didn't stop. Some people from the top floors looked at me as though I was mad. Which is, honestly true. They thought I was freaking out or playing a really bad joke. The guard dragged me to the door and said, "Calm down, now! You can't just scream fire in a building. Do you understand me? Who the hell do you think you are, punk? Tell me your name so I know what to tell the effing police." I got scared. Please believe me. I didn't want anything bad. Just trust me. There will be a fire today, here at the mall. A lot of people are going to die. I just don't want that to happen. Just ask people to leave the mall and keep it empty for the rest of the day. You can call the police in case nothing happens, but if... He sharply interrupted me. What fire? What the hell are you talking about? How could you know that? Either you're an arson, insane, or more likely you're just a little girl who has nothing to do and likes attention. You think freaking people out is just a little game, huh? You think that these stores are gonna close for no mother effing reason? You should have kept silent and went home. The police won't treat you nearly as nicely as I am now, girly. What was I supposed to do? It was getting dark, evening was near, and just like in my dream, the fire could start any minute. What was I supposed to do? I nodded at the guard, pretended to understand anything. Tears were streaming down my cheek. Then I began to go downstairs, as though I was going to go home. His eyes were following my every step. And then I looked back. He was entering the mall back to his original position. I realized that it was my last chance. It was now or never. I had to save those people, come what may. Suddenly I heard an ear-splitting noise like something huge was bursting. I was standing on the last step of the stairs leading up to the mall when I saw the fire starting on the second floor. It was just like in my dream. Right away, people began running out of the mall, swearing and bumping into one another, and I was standing still, staring, unable to move. Again, I saw something that had already happened in my dream. People were running by, and I was getting rammed into like they were a herd of speeding animals, though I guess that is actually what they were. And the police were there in a flash, as well as an ambulance and the firefighters. The rescue operation had begun, and then someone took me aside. I think he was a different security officer, but I kept watching the mall burning to the ground. I saw people on the second and third floors trying to escape. At that moment, the guard I spoke to earlier went to the police and began telling them something, pointing at me. I just stood there and did nothing. There was nothing left I could do. Then I felt the police officer grab my shoulders and started to shake me. Was it you who started the fire? Tell me now, you? Who helped you? Where are they? Come clean. You think you can get away with this? You think we won't take you to jail? I felt like stone in his hands, shaking but not moving. Not understanding what was going on, I felt the inevitability of everything happening around me. I guess I really can't change anything. Then I saw my mother, who was running to me as fast as she could. She grabbed me and also began to shake me, crying and saying that it wasn't my fault. I wasn't guilty. She said that she had forgiven me and even fell on her knees. I was still frozen, silently standing there. Everything happening around me seemed to be so surreal. The burning mall, the dying people, the desperate firefighters, even my mother, who was freaking out. Even the police officers who handcuffed me and took me to their car didn't feel real. They put me in the back of the police car and closed the door. The last time I looked out the window, I saw my mother in the fire. Then suddenly my vision became blurry, and warm, salty tears began streaming down my face. This moment would be etched in my mind for the rest of my life, and there was nothing I could do. Hello, you beautiful listeners. It's your host, Jane, coming to you live from prison. Well, I guess to put it more accurately, I'm currently in a detention facility because the cops don't have substantial evidence to prove that I was the suspect who tried to burn down the mall. While they finalize the investigation, I've been spending my days in solitary confinement. I'm not sure, though, that this is strictly legal, because I am a juvenile without a charge, or even a record for that matter. But it seems like no one cares, including my own mother. She hasn't been to visit me once. I'm all alone. I've got no support, no one to talk to, and to be honest, I think I'm okay with that. Finally, I can be alone with my thoughts, free from the burden of feeling like it's my job to save the world, you know? I'm enjoying this quiet, but I can't stop those horrific scenes from replaying in my mind, no matter how hard I try to forget. I was told that I would soon be called for questioning. They were like, "You should prepare for it." Okay, but how? What am I supposed to say? I have no idea what they're looking for, so how can I prove my innocence? This time, I don't think the truth is going to set me free. I know very well they would think I'm crazy, but being alone isn't so bad. So I might as well tell them what really went down. Honestly, it's not like it's hard to verify. I could just stay here until the next dream comes. It's currently 2 p.m. already. The guard came and took me to this little room with a table and 2 chairs. It's cold, cramped, and unwelcoming. The investigator entered the room 5 minutes after I did. She was a stern-looking adult woman who gave off airs that she was perhaps uncomfortable questioning a literal child, or maybe she just really hates teenagers. The investigator started the questioning rather coldly. She briefly asked me what I was doing at the mall that day. I told her the truth. I tried to save people, but they didn't believe me. She then asked me, "Meaning you knew about the fire in advance, yes?" "Yes." "How did you come to know about it? Did someone else tell you, or were you the one who organized it?" She began to be more persistent. I remained silent for several seconds, looking at her straight in the eyes, and then I finally answered, "I saw the fire in my dream. This wasn't the first time I've had a premonition, either." At that, she looked at me differently, as though she'd seen me for the first time. Her attitude changed. It was a bit surprising, but her tone and body language told me that she was going to treat me like an adult instead of a bratty child. At last, someone who would finally listen to me. All I have to do now is get her to believe me, and that is the bigger hurdle. "I see. That must be how it is. You can see the future, predict horrific accidents. You see them, and yet you remain silent." Have you not heard what I just said? Obviously not, but no one believes me, no one! Do you even understand the kind of stress that I'm under? If I tell, I'll be called a criminal and be ostracized, just like right freaking now, if I keep quiet and let all those souls weigh heavy on my conscience for the rest of my life. What can I do for you to freaking believe me? I started screaming. My face was reddening, my breath was shortening. Calm down and stop screaming. "So you say no one believes that nonsense you are talking about? Well, that's not very surprising. That's why you're making it true, aren't you? And that's what's happened to your friend Samantha. I'm well aware that it was because of you that she became severely injured." Who the hell does she think she is? How dare she blame me for that accident? I just wanted to help, that's it. I've never tried to hurt my best friend ever before, so why the hell is it so damn hard for everyone to think that I might actually be innocent? This burden is getting too hard to bear. I started crying so hard that I was not able to stop. The investigator clearly thought she had hit a nerve and that I would soon come clean. But what she didn't understand was that I was crying because of my own uselessness. I cried because the weight of all those lives is too heavy for me to carry. I cried because those people are someone's family, someone's loved ones, and their lives are being needlessly obliterated. I cried because I saw the injustice and I was not able to stop it. Also, I was so afraid that soon I would have another dream and that I couldn't do anything about it. After the interrogation, the guard brought me back to the cell. They gave me food and even some books. Great. I'm so sure that this will help. I ended up falling asleep around 6 p.m. I had gotten bored of reading. It wasn't a good enough distraction. My mind was in absolute turmoil, and the tears I shed during the interview showed no signs of stopping. That night would prove to be a restless one. I woke up because in my dream I saw the investigator being attacked and covered in stab wounds and blood. I couldn't watch the scene to the end because I had woken up. I have no idea if she survived. But I couldn't help but thinking, maybe if she were to get hurt, no one would bother investigating my case, and I could just stay here forever. No, Jane, stop. How could I think something so malicious? Besides, if something happens to her, she would just get replaced, and then we'd have to start all over again. Okay. Calm down, Jane. Take deep breaths. What can I do in this situation? Let's think for a second here. I'm locked up, that I know, and I've got no say on what I'm allowed to do and not to do. So now what? How can I get word to the investigator lady that something bad is going to happen? I ran to the door of my cell and called for a guard and asked him to summon the investigator immediately, as soon as possible. But he just laughed. But I was resolute. I said that I'm ready to unravel the mystery of the fire and anything else that they want to know. I will confess to everything, but only to that specific lady and only right now. That was the ticket. It seemed like a big enough draw for them. Probably they have quotas to meet or probably get a big time promotion if they get a suspect to confess. But I know it's really up. They don't actually care about me or the people who lost their lives. Everyone wants to hurt the other just to remain innocent themselves, just to get ahead. But that's not the point at the moment. The most important thing is that the investigator will be here soon. Right. About a half hour goes by and she finally arrives. She was as curt as ever and looking oh so smug. She was glowing from happiness. She even praised me for my intention to finally tell the truth. If only she'd known what would happen and what kind of truth I prepared for her. Well, don't hesitate. Say it now, she asked impatiently. Well, all right. I had a prophetic dream. This night in my dream, I saw that you were stabbed and brought to the hospital. Unfortunately, I don't know whether you ended up alive or dead. I was not able to see the scene till the end. I had said it all with a straight face, looking her square in the eyes. What? She had asked abruptly. She was clearly caught off guard. You can ignore me, but it is how it is. This evening, this event will happen. I'm telling you this to prevent it. You can think that some ordinary little girl from a little town is somehow related to mobsters or murderers. I don't want any trouble for you. If I wanted you gone and I knew about a nefarious plot to get rid of you, I wouldn't have said anything. I wasn't able to do enough for my uncle or Samantha or the people on that plane or the people from the mall. The only power I have is seeing these dreams, but I have no power to do anything about them. The guilt and responsibility is crushing and suffocating. If I could get rid of it, I would, but I can't. At the very least, I want to use it for good, but for that, I need someone to believe me. I hope that you will be this person. And then I looked at her. We just stared at one another for a long while. She was silent, looking me over as if trying to figure out my goal in creating such a bizarre scheme. But she came up empty-handed. There was no reason to lie like this, and everything I said had been the absolute truth. The ball was in her court. What happens next was up to her. Then she stood up and without a word left the cell. The long hours of waiting began. I didn't get an answer for a while, so I had no idea what she was thinking about and what she decided to do. The wait was honestly exhausting. It was scary. If she gets killed, what happens to me? If she decides to use my warning against me and say that I'm somehow related to the killers, what happens to me? I had so many what-if questions bouncing in my head, but all I could do was keep waiting. Somewhere deep inside was a hope that the investigator believed me and that she would try to protect herself. Everything happened so quickly early in the next morning. She rushed into my cell and asked the guard to leave us alone. She told me that night someone had tried to kill her. It was someone who she managed to put in prison. He got out of jail and wanted to get his revenge, but he had failed. She protected herself because she took a chance and believed in me. She said that she even admired me. It felt rather awkward, but I saw what she had wanted. To help me. She said that she believes me, but she had no idea how to make the others believe me. She said that from now on, at the very least, I should tell her everything I see in my dreams. And maybe together we could prevent some of these accidents. She said that she would definitely get me out of here and clear my name. And then she hugged me before leaving and asked me not to be afraid. She said I wasn't alone from that moment on, and I couldn't believe it. I'm not alone anymore. Someone to be my foundation, to support, to share this heavy load with. But I knew that the work had just begun. Hello again, it's me, Jane, and oh my God, I'm over the moon. I've never felt so relieved in all my life. Someone finally believes my insane story. Someone who truly understands that I'm telling the truth, that I want to help and to save, not to destroy and ruin. And it's this wonderful woman, Her name is Mary. Her name sounds like the first bird song of spring, like the last bell of school before summer, like freedom. I know that Mary will take me away from here, and we will be able to change everything together. All I have to do is wait for another prophetic dream. Simple. I was so excited after we had our talk, I couldn't sleep for the whole next night. Afterwards, though, I didn't have any dreams, normal or otherwise. I'm not sure if my mood makes a difference. I really don't know much about any of this. However, I think that no dreams, while that means nothing bad nearby is going to happen, it also means that my freedom is being postponed. I have no clue how to jumpstart the visions again, or even what triggers them. I guess I also don't really know for sure if my visions are only stuff that happens around me, so I guess for all I know, there are tragedies all around, and I haven't been able to do anything about them. That thought terrifies me. The ever-present idea that anything bad happening is my fault. People around me don't understand what it's like. The prison guards laugh at me. They call me a phony, a liar. Earlier, I hated my gift. It's all because of it that I became stuck here. But now that I have someone who believes me, I'm begging for it to come back so I can leave this place. My loneliness and isolation drives me crazy, though. Mary calls me regularly and asks about my well-being and my dreams, but my answer remains the same. Nothing. I just feel empty and I see nothing. I think she's getting annoyed. She hangs up as soon as I say that I haven't seen anything, but that's okay. I know she just wants to help me like I helped her preventing her murder. I'm positive. Although, sometimes I wonder if maybe she just wants to get famous using my gift. That's why she looks forward to hearing about my dreams. She wants them even more than me, but I'm trying to kick such thoughts out of my mind. I have no proof, and she's the only one willing to help. I need to accept whatever I can get. All I do these days, however, is just sit in my cell pretending to have conversations with made-up people. I just need company. How can this kind of isolation not be considered cruel and unusual punishment? I just need some human interaction. The guards don't count because they don't treat me like a human being. And I don't really want to call Mary again. These last few days, she hasn't said anything to me anymore. She's angry with me, so what am I to do? That day, I was lost in my thoughts when suddenly a guard enters. "Stand up! Get out! Now!" He grabs my wrists and drags me towards the exit. I don't resist him, but it still hurts. I have no idea what's going on. He brings me to the room where I talked with Mary for the first time. Finally, I see my investigator once again, and I'll be able to talk with her privately, face to face. She has been missing for several days, and I've become so tired of being alone all the time without any companionship. But instead of Mary, Samantha's mother enters the room. And then Samantha herself follows soon after. She has a bandaged leg, and she looks tired. This is quite the surprise for me. Samantha hasn't visited me before. She said she didn't want to even hear my voice, to say nothing about seeing me or talking to me. And now we're in the same room. I'm sure she still blames me for what happened to her. Why else would she abandon me like this otherwise? I brace myself for whatever she wants to say to me. I'm not sure if I'm brave enough for more rejection, though. Her mother, who has always disliked me, asked Samantha to call the guards in case I do something stupid and erratic, and left. "I need to tell you something," started Samantha. Her shaking voice meant that she was going to say something not very pleasant. I gritted my teeth and balled my fists. "I would never have come here for you. You know that. After everything you've done to me." I tried to explain, but she stopped me and continued speaking. "Please don't. I already know it's your fault. The only thing I still can't understand is how in the world did your mother deserve such an awful daughter?" Samantha sneered at me, looking at me with a mix of pity and disgust. I was stunned. I tried to listen carefully and understand exactly what she was talking about. "I've come here to tell you that your mother is in the hospital. She had a heart attack, and now she's on the verge of death." I sat slowly in a chair. I looked at Samantha without really seeing her. She was like my own personal Grim Reaper. Did she come all this way just to tell me that? Was she blaming this on me too? But how? I don't understand. My thoughts were all mixed up in my head. I wanted to scream and cry at the same time. My mother and I rarely saw eye to eye. We fought all the time, and And she never bothered to visit me, defend me, or contact me while I've been stuck here in jail. But she's still my mother, right? You have to love your own mother. She gave birth to me, after all. She raised me, and now she's in the hospital and I can't even be with her? Well, I guess she doesn't want to see me anyway. I started crying. Samantha's mother entered, and they left the room together, silently. I was sitting alone for several minutes, crying, not being able to stop. My tears were dripping down my face like salty rain. The main reason for my tears wasn't even that I couldn't see my mother, but for my own pitiful state. Then the guards came, and he roughly grabbed my arm and took me back to my cell. But this time I felt no pain, because all my feelings and thoughts were somewhere far away, where my mother is lying in her hospital bed, all alone. I lay down on my bed and huddled. This way I was trying to save the rest of my energy, not to sink in the deepest depths of despair, where I had no way of crawling back out. I don't know for how long I stayed like that, but the next thing I knew, Mary had entered my cell. She carefully sat on my bed and hugged me, without a word. Someone must have told her what had happened. That simple act of kindness, that human touch. It was like I was breathing air for the first time, and I gulped it greedily. The feeling of someone who cares for me, someone who has an interest in me, not because of my gift, but because of me. It was so warm. You can cry if you want to, said Mary. I've already cried my eyes out. Then Mary asked me about my dreams, whether I had some or not. I rapidly shook my head. Those damn dreams don't want to let me out of here. Like they were doing it on purpose. They stopped appearing just to keep me here for the rest of my life. I had no idea what the hell was happening. Mary stayed with me for several more minutes, and then she got called away. She kissed me on the forehead goodbye and said that she believes me despite everything. And then she was gone, and I fell asleep. It was a nervous and desperate sleep, but I saw a dream once again. That morning, I woke up in a funk because I'd seen all the terrors that were going to happen pretty soon. There was going to be a murder. It was gruesome. The suspect would be wearing a mask and would try to assassinate our mayor, who was a good and strong man with good morals. I don't know who he upset to cause this kind of response, but that's not what matters right now. The murder will happen around noon, and there will be a big crowd. It was a miracle that no one except the mayor had gotten hurt. It feels like the shooter in the mask was a true specialist, someone who really knows his stuff. I saw how everything went down. The lifeless body of the mayor falling down at the center of the square, and all the people beginning to panic and to run away, fleeing the scene for their own safety. The killer got down from their perch and looked around. Men and women were screaming, children were crying, and the first responders were trying to evacuate the population and get to the mayor. It was so scary. Really scary. After I woke up, I felt that the most terrifying thing was the consequences that would follow. If someone kills the mayor, the city could sink into chaos. He was the only person who can contain all these people in our city for all these years. Only he could control us the way he had recently enacted really good progressive policies that made both parties happy. That's why I was afraid to even imagine what would happen if we don't prevent this assassination and save the mayor. When I woke up and collected my thoughts, I knocked at the door and asked the guards to call Mary. They laughed at me once again, but I was persistent. I begged them, though I didn't mention the name of the mayor and everything that I had seen in my dream. What was the point of trying to convince them? I just begged them to call my investigator for her to come here as soon as possible. Finally, they relented. In half an hour, Mary was here. What have you seen? Please, tell me, Jane, she said nervously. Whew. The mayor's assassination. What? How? Today? She said. I honestly don't know, Mary. I know what day it is, and I know the place. It'll be around noon in our square of fame. That's where I saw his body fall when he was shot with a bullet coming from this direction. I mimed the whole scenario. Mary was sitting near me and shaking her head. Apparently, she couldn't believe what I was saying. Not like this is any easier for me. Dare I say I might actually have the worse end of the bargain. But Mary was already trying to figure out what to do. She abruptly stood up. Listen, we need to go to my department. There, my team will devise a rescue plan. It's important that we call his security. They need to give him a bulletproof vest. Our only hope is that he'll heed our words, and also that he hasn't left for the event already. Then we approached the door and left the cell. I didn't even look back to see those boorish guards and the astonished, dumbfounded faces I'm sure they wore. Hello, everyone. It's Jane here again. Everything's happening pretty fast right now. Can you believe I'm nearly free again? I know I'm not like 100% off the hook, but still, after being abandoned for weeks, the end is finally in sight. As soon as Mary and I left the prison, we went to her department where she works as a criminal investigator. We had to alert everyone about the pending assassination against our mayor. I felt the stern and hostile looks of Mary's coworkers when we arrived. They were observing me from head to toe, clearly unimpressed. Apparently, she had told them a lot about me and my case, so naturally, they thought I was a loony. She probably also told them that I saved her life, but hey, I know plenty of hard-headed people. We revisited a few just last episode, remember? Anyway, I felt deeply uncomfortable standing there under their critical gaze. Mary, however, was unfazed and focused on her goal. She calmly walked me to her office, then gestured for me to sit. She picked up her phone and began to dial. I vaguely knew that her plan consisted of warning people who were in charge of the mayor's security. According to her words, I understand that someone on the other end of the line didn't want to listen to the words of a random cop drone. Mary got mad, though she didn't let it show through her voice, but I could see her brow furrowing. She was patiently trying to convince the governor's assistants that he was in danger, though they didn't really want to hear her out. Oh, I know this feeling all too well. Trying to persuade those who don't want to listen, the rising anger screaming into a void, desperately trying to be heard. I started staring into space, sinking into my depression when I was snapped back to reality by the sound of Mary angrily hanging up and sinking into her chair. She was thinking deeply about something. I stared at her, trying to catch up with her thoughts and intentions, but her eyes were staring blindedly at the wall as if she got lost inside of her own mind. After several minutes, Mary put herself together. She looked at me. "How about being a little naughty?" I didn't quite understand, but I was tempted. Perhaps? What do you mean? You'll see soon. Mary grabbed my hand and walked me out of the office. She put me in the middle of her department. "Everyone, listen to me. This girl knows that today something awful is going to happen. She knows that our mayor will be killed." Somebody laughed. "There's nothing funny here. This little girl saved my life. It was she who wanted to save her uncle, her friend, and also people from the mall. That's why she's here. But do you know why those things happened anyway? Because no one believed her. Not you, not me, no one. And now it's going to happen again. But you won't even take a chance to listen for the sake of your own pride. Are you so fragile that you'd be willing to risk someone else losing their life?" Everyone looked at her, considering her words carefully. Do we all risk our reputation, our career, or someone's life? All on the words of a little girl and this woman? These questions were in their eyes. There was nothing more we could say. They had to choose what they were going to do next. "Mary, what in the hell are you talking about? Are you trying to tell us that you trust some child because of nothing more than a lucky guess?" asked one of her coworkers. "She didn't guess. She knew for certain in advance. She has prophetic dreams," said Mary. "So, what are you proposing?" asked her colleague again. "Please do try to understand that I don't want to risk his life because only he can maintain peace and happiness in our city. I want to help him and save him, and to do this, I need you to be at the right place at the right time, all wearing your bulletproof vests." Her co-workers looked at one another. "What are you up to?" kept asking her colleague, but she just pointed at her office. After that, they left me alone and gathered in her office, planning their actions. About an hour later, everything was ready. All the policemen gathered in one place, wearing informal clothes. They started to put their plan into action. Somehow, though, that plan involved me, so they took me along with them. About another hour goes by, and we finally arrive at the Square of Fame. Before that, Mary got all of the necessary information about the time of the governor's arrival and its purpose. Apparently, he was going to attend the opening ceremony of a long-awaited new monument. I had seen it in my dream, too, but it was mostly out of my field of vision, so I didn't remember it so well. Now I understand why there were so many people outside. No one would want to miss such an opportunity as getting to witness the opening ceremony of a new memorial. All of the investigators discreetly moved around the square. Now all they have to do is wait. They left me at a distance where I could observe the operation and say when the pieces of my dream would start to combine, waiting for the first domino to fall and the event would be triggered. I carefully watched all the people, perhaps trying to spot the culprit. The mayor and his guards appeared at about 1:05 p.m. He was friendly, smiling, and sincere. He greeted all the citizens who gathered around the memorial. Then he started to approach the stand which was set out for him in the middle of the square. That was the moment when my dream began to slowly come true. I informed Mary through a walkie-talkie, and she spread it further. With that, everyone began to follow the established plan of action. One of the cops suddenly jumped out of the crowd and grabbed the mayor. After that, he covered the governor with his body. The investigators surrounded them in a tight circle. His guards were confused. People started to walk away to avoid such an incident, and suddenly a shot was fired. The bullet hit the investigator who was covering the mayor. Fortunately, the man was still standing. It seemed he was only grazed. The bulletproof vest, I remembered. The team thought through every detail to save everyone and keep themselves safe as well. I breathed a sigh of relief. After the first shot, people began to panic and run away. The mayor's guards put themselves together and started to surround their charge and look around. The other investigators also kept surrounding him in a protective circle. At first, he was resisting, but after the shot rang out, he kept quiet and was trying to hide behind their backs. Then there was another shot, and it hit Mary. She fell, holding her wounded hand, her cries of pain ringing in my ears. I couldn't stay standing aside. I ran to her. That moment, the killer, who was holding a rifle, appeared from behind a tree and started to run away. The guards noticed and chased after him. For now, all seemed relatively calm. The investigators carefully walked the mayor to his car. Lower-ranked security for the event tried to calm down the citizens and disperse the crowd. Several police cars and ambulances arrived on the scene shortly thereafter. The doctors put Mary on a stretcher. She told me it wasn't anything serious, just a scratch. But I saw how painful it was. She's so brave. She looked so composed even after all that. After the first gut reaction of being hit that I heard earlier, she refused to show any other signs that she was in any kind of pain. I said that I was going to follow my friend to the hospital. Besides, my mother was also in that very same hospital, so they let me stay in the car with Mary. When we finally arrived at the hospital, I visited my mother first. She was sound asleep when I walked in. Carefully, I sat near her and took hold of her hand. She felt it and opened her eyes. "Jane?" she asked. I nodded and smiled. "But what are you doing here?" she began, but I stopped her. "Everything's fine, Mom. Don't worry. I didn't run away from jail, if that's what you're thinking. And all of the things I told you before are true. You'll see soon. Just don't worry and don't scream at me, please." My mom's eyes were full of tears. She patted my hand and smiled. All right, my dear." Then she pointed at the TV that was hanging on the wall of her hospital room. I turned it on for her. At that moment, the room sank into screams and gunshots. Today's incident with our mayor was all over the news. The reporters talked about the local investigators that saved the mayor while risking their own lives. However, the most amazing thing was that they also talked about me. At that moment, my mother opened her eyes widely and looked at me. "What? Is it true? You really can see the future and prevented whatever that was?" she had asked. "Yeah, it is true, but I can't do anything on my own. But don't worry, Mom. Someone finally believes me. Someone finally supported me. Now look at the outcome. I'm finally doing some good." That moment, the reporters came into the room. We were astonished and didn't quite know what to do, or even if they were allowed in here. They began to ask me questions about my abilities, opportunities, and reasons why I have such dreams. I just shrugged and asked them to please leave us alone. Unfortunately, that didn't work. But you'll never guess what happened next. Suddenly, the mayor himself appeared. He came to thank me for his rescue personally. It was amazing. I never in my life imagined being in the same room with him, let alone being heralded as responsible for saving his life. He loudly announced that I am a true local hero, a miracle even. He said that if I'm willing, he will give me support and the power to help our city become better, stronger, and safer. I cried, but for the first time in a long while, they were tears of happiness and relief. Then he shook my hand and kissed my fingers. He even gave me a medal for bravery, but I didn't care. I would be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying my sudden fame. But I have Mary to thank for every good thing that has happened to me since this whole thing started. I rushed through the crowd of the reporters and photographers to the hospital room of my favorite investigator. I ran into Mary's room and saw her, alive and smiling. Immediately I hugged her and I said nothing for a long while, but I knew she understood everything. My cheeks began to hurt from smiling too much. "Thank you, Mary."